Former homeless people, what did you need the most? What was the best thing someone did for you? When I lost my job after the Y2K remediation, I wound up broke as a joke and no hopes of job from anywhere in Oregon at the time. Girlfriend got asked to come take over her family's failing company business in Utah, and we decided to go for it. Got here with nowhere to live, no money, a quarter tank of gas. We lived in our cars for a while, then we found a row of 3 abandoned houses in Provo and squatted in the middle one. While she tried to rescue the family business, I got a gig delivering those stupid free newspapers that people get in their driveway. Wife's car was a long bed F-350, so we could deliver a ton of papers. That's what kept us fed. I was 32 and a paper route was my only income. As far as the nicest thing anyone did, one day a guy came and knocked on our door, saying he was the house owner. We said sorry and we will pack up and get the frick out right now. However, the guy was nice. He said he owned all 3 of these empty houses and thanked us for keeping the crackheads out of them, and he let us stay there. He even turned the power on for us. What the heck? 6 months after that, I wound up getting a job at eBay, and it was onward and upward from there. So really all we needed was a chance, and we got it. Story 2. My wife was homeless as a teenager. On Friday afternoons, a businessman would walk up to her and ask her if she was hungry. She would say yes, and he would take her into a restaurant on the corner. She never felt any danger with him, and she has had to cut somebody badly before. He was just some dude offering her a meal. He would let her get anything on the menu. He would sit and read the paper and drink a cup of coffee. There was never any conversation. When he was finished, he would pay the bill and leave. There was never any exchange of words other than, "You hungry?" and "Have what you want," and "Have a good afternoon." This happened multiple times. She never felt like a project to him. She never felt less than him. She never felt in danger. He was just a guy who saw a dirty girl on the street who needed to eat. She has since gotten her GED, graduated from a trade school with a fitness degree, and now has earned her MBA with honors. She is an amazing woman and an amazing mother. The one wish she has is that she can run into the businessman who bought her lunches and thank him. You know, it just goes to show you really don't need to do a grand gesture or anything like that to help someone get back up on their feet. I mean, the lunch is great and all. It's not cheap. It's not expensive. Like, it's just kind of plain and whatever. But I think the thing that helps the most is just treating the person like a person. Story 3. Employment. I wasn't addicted and wasn't mentally ill, but I had legal trouble and employers aren't going to hire someone who is probably going to jail 5 months from now. I had to work under the table for like $4 an hour. If there had been a way for me to get a decent temp job, I could have probably got a crappy apartment for the interim. I was able to secure a spot in a church basement for a while. The nicest thing anyone did was one of the few people from church brought me a Super Nintendo and a stack of games to help keep the boredom and loneliness at bay. Story 4. I was homeless as a teenager and used to hitchhike around the country. This is the story of the nicest thing a stranger has ever done for me. I hope they get to see this and know I still remember them and appreciate what they did. I was hiking from Wisconsin to New Orleans. I was 15 and pregnant, although I didn't know it at the time. I was sick and throwing up and was trying to get back to New Orleans to get to the charity hospital. I was having a terrible journey. A guy had tried to grab my leg and I resisted and he dropped me off on a toll road where no one would pick me up. So I spent several days walking until a semi-truck driver finally gave me a lift. He was a nice old man and I told him up front that I was 15 and he promised he wouldn't try to hurt me. He told me I reminded him of his niece and would give me a ride as far as he could go. I spent a few hours riding with him until we got near St. Louis, and then he pulled off the road at a rest area and asked me if I needed to use the restroom. I did, and I was stupid enough to leave my backpack in his truck when I went in to use it. When I came out, he had thrown my backpack out into the parking lot and left me there. And there were bums going through my bag stealing my stuff. I was tired, hungry, and now I'd just been robbed of what little possessions I had. Only a few items of clothing remained. I walked down the highway again, and a short time later a car pulled over to give me a lift. The man inside was very overweight, sweaty, smelly, and was wearing just a t-shirt and a dolphin short. The only reason I accepted the ride was because he had a CB radio in his car, and I thought I could use it to call ahead for another ride. Joke was on me. Once we got down the road, he told me the CB didn't work, and now I was stuck in the car with this creepy guy. Luckily, he said he could only give me a lift to the other side of St. Louis. It only took a few minutes before his hands started sliding up my leg. I scooted as close to the door as I could and told him I was only 15 and didn't put out for rides, and he immediately withdrew his hand and apologized. He said he would take me a bit farther to make up for it. A few minutes later, here comes the hand again. I asked him to let me out. He apologized again and said he'd take me further. He started to pull off onto an exit. Me. Can I get out here? Guy. No, there's a place I want to show you. I look over and there's a sign for a lake up the exit, and I instantly pictured myself tied to a rock at the bottom of a lake. As soon as he got to the end of the exit ramp where it meets the off-road, I opened my door, grabbed my bag, and tried to jump out. He grabbed my necklace, one of those thick choke chain kinds, and shirt and pulled me back inside and started choking me with it. I was punching him as hard as I could and I got a good one right in his nose. He loosened his grip enough for me to pull free and I ran across the off-road and back onto the entrance to the highway. First he yelled, "Get back here, you stupid female dog," and tried to run after me. But he was too fat and I was too far ahead. So he tried to hit me with his car. I jumped over the little rail that runs along the ditch, and I guess he didn't want to damage his car, so he kept going and got back on the highway. Now I'm absolutely terrified that he's going to turn around at the next exit and come back for me. So I'm frantically waving down cars on the highway. My neck is swelling and it's hard to breathe. My shirt is torn open. I haven't showered or eaten in 3 days. I'm crying. I'm sick. I'm a big freaking mess. And just to make things worse, it starts to rain. But then a car pulls over. A cop car. Thank the gods I'm saved. I don't even care if I have to go to jail, at least there will be food there. The officer opens up the front door and tells me to get in. It was a lady in a brown uniform. Not sure if she's sheriff, police, park ranger, I have no clue. I'm just happy to be getting away from that freaking psycho. I tell her the whole story while she's driving down the highway. She says she'll make sure I'm safe. She takes me to a gas station and gives me $10 to buy some sandwiches. Then she tells me it's going to get dark soon and she can't just leave an underage girl out on the highway at night. So she's going to take me somewhere where I can get some sleep. She takes me to her house and lets me take a shower. And while I was in there, she washed my clothes for me. After that, she drove me to a Sonic and bought me some dinner. We went back to her house and she let me sleep on her couch. It was around 4 a.m. when she woke me up again. Now there's a man there, and my first thought is, oh crap, what have I gotten myself into now? She introduces the man as her brother, and they tell me that they don't want me hitchhiking tomorrow, so they bought me a bus ticket to New Orleans while I was asleep. They drove me to the bus station and her brother gifted me a huge Bowie knife and said, next time someone tries to hurt you, just use this. And they sent me on my way. I've never been able to repay this woman, but I hope my story reaches her and she knows that she saved my life that day. I made it to a charity hospital and I found out I was pregnant and returned to my family to raise my daughter. Thank you, lady. You were so kind that I've spent my whole life trying to pay it forward. You're awesome. Holy crap, that is just terrifying. I mean, like, the idea of being homeless and people just kind of look down on you and you have nowhere to go is scary and threatening enough, but can you imagine being a woman, let alone a young woman? She survived so many freaking, like, dangers and creeps, like it's almost a miracle that she's even alive. And thank the Lord. I mean, what a freaking lady this was to pull over and give her the help and to spend money on her, both with food and sleep and that's just a miraculous story, and it warms my heart to know that there are people out there who will actually, go the extra mile to care. It doesn't take a lot, but, it's just beautiful. Story 5. I was homeless with a dog, so that made everything a lot more difficult. Just finding enough food and water for us both to survive. When I was first homeless, it would get pretty cold at night and it was hard to keep blankets because when it rained and they got wet, it took forever for them to dry again. Me and my dog would huddle together under a tarp just shivering. This is the best spot we had. Lived at an abandoned tire shop in a tire rack on a sort of bed I made us of stuff I found in various dumpsters. I would pick up bottles of water or whatever kind of drink people would throw away and fill them up at the water faucet outside this church that was nearby. They never dogged me out, so that was really nice. I was so scared every time I would go to fill up the water. I remember shaking so bad, eyes darting around everywhere, ready to bolt. But it was so hot, I was so thirsty and hungry. Sometimes on my way to get water, I'd get too tired to even walk anymore from the heat and dehydration. I'd literally fall asleep on the sidewalk on a main street for hours. No one once ever stopped to check if I was dead. The best thing someone did was getting me off the streets. I was passed out under a bridge with my dog, and I get woken up by this guy holding a box of donuts. I was in awe. He gave me 2, one for me, and I gave the other to my dog. It tasted so good. Food! And it hadn't even been on the ground. He was with 3 people. They were part of an outreach group. They got me into a shelter with my dog. That day, I was just crying. So happy and so thankful. I was barely surviving. So far all these stories is just a big restoring my faith in humanity kind of session. I'm loving it! And apparently America really does run on Duncan. Story 6. Pay taxes. People love telling you to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, but it's hard when your boots are falling apart and new boots are $50, but I can get drunk for $6. Without a phone and a mailing address, you can't get a job, and the only ones who provided those were the government. Sure, churches and shelters will let you sleep on the floor and take a shower, but the next day you are still wearing filthy, ratty clothes and no one is in a hurry to get you something to wear to an interview. People will give you a job washing dishes, but when you get arrested for sleeping on a park bench and jail is heated and the park bench is not, guess what? I'll stay in jail instead of washing dishes. People will give you a pittance that makes you hope it will get better, but as soon as something happens, you're on your own and back where you started. What got me out of being homeless? A studio apartment that cost the city a total of $1,200 until I could pay rent myself. Homeless people don't need socks or food or healthcare nearly as much as they need somewhere stable to live and eat and shower and go to the bathroom, where they don't have to worry about their meager possessions getting stolen or getting robbed or assaulted. Story 7. There's a quote from Sports Night that would be good for people to read. I'm already seeing the "don't give homeless people money, what if they spend it on blank" sentiments. Isaac. Danny, every morning I leave an acre and a half of the most beautiful property in New Canaan, get on a train and come to work in a 54-story glass high-rise. In between, I step over bodies to get here, 20, 30, 50 of them a day. So as I'm stepping over them, I reach into my pocket and give them whatever I've got. Dan, you're not afraid they're going to spend it on booze? Isaac, I'm hoping they're going to spend it on booze. Look, Dan, these people, most of them, it's not like they're one hot meal away from turning it around. For most of them, the clock's pretty much run out. You'll be home soon enough. What's wrong with giving them a little Novocaine to get them through the night? That's an interesting point of view. You know, instead of worrying about what they're going to do with it, sometimes just giving them the chance, to do anything with it is enough. Story 8. There's a guy who I see every time I am leaving my gym. He's got a shopping cart and all his possessions, including a little dog. He holds a sign that says, "Anything helps, my dog and I appreciate it." I bought a box of dog biscuits yesterday when I was getting my own cat food, and I plan to give it to him today after my workout. This thread convinced me to add $5 to it. Even if I am a sucker because he got a dog with him, that's okay. See, that's the beauty in sharing stories. Look at that. Like, in live time, it inspired somebody to go and contribute and actually help somebody that was homeless and in need. See, that's beautiful. And if you're listening right now, there's still time to go and help somebody who really needs it. Story 9. I'm homeless currently, living in a motel. Have been homeless for 4 years as of this month. We need ways to clear our name so we can actually move into places. My mom got evicted from our apartment after getting laid off, and now we can't move in anywhere half decent anymore. Only motels and living with other people. Also, stability is really nice, but almost impossible to come by for more than a few months. The nicest thing was an old couple taking in me and my mom for 3 months. Some really great people, and I'll always appreciate them. Story 10. 15 years ago, the most crucial things we needed were impossible. Like a mailing address, phone number, toilet, and water. We'd keep a payphone under watch for those who'd get calls. Trying to get a job, housing, anything. The basics are hard. Now, phones are cheap, but water and toilets are still real needs. Addresses are still tricky, but easier as we rely on a location less than digital info. Public transportation is still ridiculous. You have to spend a day or two convincing the system you need it free, otherwise you'll be out of what little you can make in a 3-transit path. Story 11. I was a street kid. From 13 to 18, I coasted around on my own. As you can imagine, it was a pretty rough ride. I don't remember an awful lot of it, but a few people stand out even now. I think the only thing they have in common is that they saw me. It's amazing how invisible you feel on the street. People steer their children away from you, avert their gaze, pretend you're invisible. It gets to you. I vividly remember this one woman. Immaculately dressed, gorgeous Eastern European woman, around 40. I was panhandling and she walked right up to me and asked me to eat with her. I sat on a patio smoking cigarettes, snacking, drinking coffee. She asked me questions about myself like she really cared. And she listened. Didn't offer miracle solutions or pity, just fed me lunch and listened. I remember her face 15 years later. It's why now, in my reincarnation as a soccer mom, I teach my children to always acknowledge when it's safe to do so. You don't always need to give, but a smile or a "how are you?" goes an incredibly long way. Oh, humanity can be beautiful. Exactly what I was saying. All you need to do to make someone feel like a person is treat them like a person. Although humanity can also be, disgusting and dark. But I like this. This is beautiful and heartwarming. So if you see somebody, just treat them normal. Smile. Hey, how's your day? What's going on? A lot of it goes very far. Story 12. I left an abusive relationship and it turns out he was right. I had nowhere to go. I slept under a train and shoplifted what few basics I couldn't go without, which frankly I still don't regret. F the Waltons. And got a job at Burger King. I mean, being homeless and all meant that my hygiene was horrible. Cut off all my hair to hide it, but there's a certain point where you can't anymore. One of my managers pulled me aside and asked me what was up. She called out, sweetly as she could, the red flags she'd seen. My self-harm scars, my hygiene, the breakdown I had when my ex came through the drive-thru, and I'm pretty sure she already knew what was up, at least somewhat. She started scheduling all of our shifts to overlap and taking me home with her, not far from my nest spot, so I could shower and eat dinner with her and her kid. Kinda just took me in as best as she could. The shower was nice, so was the food, but the experience of someone giving a crap what was helped, quite honestly. Be kind. Story 13. Someone willing to take a chance. When you're homeless and people find out, it usually results in a negative change in their perception of you, particularly in the perceptions held by those who could potentially be employers and landlords. That's if you choose to disclose the information. Easy to do with employment if you're capable of staying physically clean, i.e. regular showers and trips to the laundromat. Not so easy to do with a potential landlord, as you have to disclose your rental history. When you tell people you're homeless, you are bound to get people who will treat you with disdain. People who assume you're homeless because of some vice like drugs, alcohol, gambling, etc. There are many reasons for why someone is homeless that have nothing to do with how responsible you may or may not be, such as natural disasters, fires, floods, illness, or injury, and escaping dangerous situations like DV. I'm not homeless because I'm irresponsible or addicted to some substance, illegal or otherwise. I'm homeless because life threw a wrench at my head and then started beating me with it while I was down. I had a clean rental history, no evictions or anything of the like, and I worked 40 to 60 hours a week to afford my bills, which took priority over everything. I could afford rent, but nobody believed I would pay it just because I was homeless. Story 14. A place to sleep and shower. You'd be amazed how much you'd value a good night's sleep on a couch or a bed, then in the morning having a shower. A close second to those was actually someone taking my situation seriously and helping me through it. My situation was an odd one. I was considered too unstable mentally to hold down a job. Yet I still had to work because while I was considered by doctors and mental health professionals to be unstable, by my country's messed up sense of what poverty is/isn't, I couldn't claim any benefits. It didn't help that the one benefit I was entitled to was withheld from me by a vindictive housing officer, and my abusive mother would steal most of the money I got. I could only speak about my homeless experience, but I had a point where I was at my lowest point, and it took 2 self-unaliving attempts to actually get any help for my issue. Story 15. Aged out of foster care, nowhere to go but a squat house, I was what Utah folks called a planter box kid. Spent a year doing any job and every job I possibly could to get out of it, then I joined the Army. Spent 4 years as a soldier and failed a marriage, which meant I got medical discharge after my deployment. I was homeless again. Spent a little while in a veteran group home, but they only give you 90 days to get a place and get out. My disability pay wasn't enough for rent, but I went to a day labor and stood with the Mexicans at Home Depot for odd jobs. Finally, my best friend offered me to move back home to Texas to work as a ranch hand for her dad, so I moved back to Texas, and she became a huge advocate for me with the VA, and now I run a ranch, am off all my pain and psychotic drugs, and haven't been drunk in 3 years. Oh, and now my best friend is my wife. We have 4 kids. Aw, that's sweet. You know what? Most of these are just a small gesture, a smile, a hello, couple bucks, whatever. But this person, found love and a family. And I think that's, I don't know anyone who's gonna top that in terms of nicest thing that was ever done for him. Guy found a wife and a life and a kid and a family. Hallmark, where are you? Story 16. Not the homeless man, but this is what a homeless man said to me. I was gone to a cafe and got myself a donut and frappuccino. I enjoyed the frappuccino and was left too full for the donut. When I walked out of the cafe, there was this homeless man begging. I gave him the donut and told him to enjoy it. He said, "This is the nicest thing someone did for me this week. Please remember, homeless people are people first and foremost. Talk to them every now and then. Listen to them, share your time, share some food with them. They deserve love just as much as everyone else." Wait, nicest thing anyone's ever done this week? How many donuts is this guy getting? I've never gotten a free donut ever. The sentiment about helping people out still stands, though. I want a donut. Story 17. My husband was homeless when I first got together with him. We had been friends for a couple of years before anything happened. I was in another relationship at the time, so it started out as helping him with food, a place to shower or sleep when I could. But then it turned into more, and I left the person I was with, moved into a teeny tiny crappy one-room apartment with him. Now, almost 4 years later, we have a 1-year-old son, and it was the best decision I ever made. All in all, my husband says he really just needed love and support while he was in his darkest time. He stopped doing drugs and really turned his life around. It took a lot of hard work, but he did it. He tries to credit me constantly, but it was all him. Story 18. I was homeless for about 2 years when I was younger. I had a car, a Nissan Sentra, had like 250,000 miles on it, no insurance, no registration, had my plate but everything elapsed. A ranger at a local park and campground where you could camp out for $18 a night, as long as you were in the place by 8 p.m., will let me just park there knowing I had no tent or camping equipment, and I slept in the back seat. I worked 12 hours a day at a gas station pumping gas. One time he brought me half a pie he had bought. FYI, the worst thing was every other homeless person. I'll let you in on a secret. Most homeless people are homeless by choice. They are violent, mostly drug abusers and sociopaths who would kill you for a cigarette. Those people are by shelters are worse than prisons. In prison, you can see it coming. You know everyone is a criminal, but not in a shelter. Someone will act like they're a friend 1 second, then try to get you to go back with 3 of their friends for a discussion, aka SA. Worse were some of the groups of homeless kids, the runaways, etc. They'll befriend you as long as you have a cigarette or a drug, and then at 2 a.m., gang up on you and beat the crap out of you and take everything you got. They don't give a crap. I saw a heartbreaking style interview with a kid on a local TV station not long after I got into an apartment. And this kid was all, "I've been on the street since I was 13, blah blah, no one helps me." I knew from others and seen him that he was a violent mental case who had beat a pregnant girl until she lost the kid. That's the side of homelessness no one wants you to know. Or the couple who will trade the woman for drugs, then try to cut you for the rest. Crap ain't right out there, folks. And you've found some homeless people living in the woods or something? Stay the F away. Story 19. So the reality of being homeless is a couple of variations. You live in a shelter, shelters are run like jails, you have in and out times, everything is running on their schedule. Lots of rules and very few freedoms, but more than an actual jail. It's insane. A hustler's market, an old folks' home, and finally a place for a few too to get back on their feet. Yes, you can get fed and find a way out, but the stress for someone not used is this insane high. They try to scam you at every moment. Unsanitary, ultra-cold sleeping environment with no warm bedding, aggressive staff, all the while you are on edge not to pee someone off because you don't want to lose your bed. And the list goes on. Option 2. Buy a sleeping bag and live outside. Bugs and weather, and how do you spend your off time? Number 3. Friends. Not many people have tolerance to help others. Actually, they don't have the ability to help others. Not even family. We are too self-involved as a society. The reason homeless people exist is for a few reasons. Nobody cares. People take advantage of others' good nature, and it's expensive to be homeless. Option 4 is to buy a hotel every night. Buy food at a gas station, $5 for a sandwich. Think about everything you do every day, that all has a cost, and when you can't get a foot long, it's like living in quicksand. Yes, free food exists. Services exist, but it's a nightmare to access most times. Spend 3 hours in line for food stamps for them to tell you that you don't have the proper paperwork. Oh, no birth certificate? Sorry, can't help you. Want a birth certificate? That'll be $65 in 3 weeks. The bureaucracy involved is insane. Edit. To answer the question, I need people to stop being so deceptive and predatory on both sides. The bureaucracy needs to be more streamlined, if not eliminated. Story 20. What I needed most was a job. My entire life was structured around obtaining food and shelter first, and then I looked for work when possible. I also needed a weekly MARTA pass to get around Atlanta. Without that pass, I was screwed. Living in Atlanta without transportation is hopeless. The nicest thing anyone did for me? Sack lunches. I stayed 3 weeks at a shelter in Marietta run by Methodists. There were no sermons, these were just decent people who gave us food and beds for 3 weeks. They volunteered their nights to stay up all night and watch over us. The thing they did that really made me all warm and fuzzy, every morning when we left for the day, on the way out the door they handed us a sack lunch. Typically a peanut butter sandwich, a piece of fruit, and a bag of chips. It was just like being a kid and leaving for school and mom hands you a lunch. That lunch made me feel like someone on this planet actually cared about me. It was the first time I'd felt that in months. I didn't even realize how low I was feeling until that first sack lunch made me tear up like a softie. I'd go out into the world on the never-ending job search, and when I eventually ate that lunch, I felt loved. It really lifted my spirits. I'm pretty anti-religion, but much respect for Must Ministries in Marietta, Methodist United in Service and Trust, and their SNOR shelter, Safe Night or Rest. They really gave my spirits a boost, and I found a job shortly before I left there. There was a lady there named Lisa who was so engaging and kind. Never any condescension or judgmental attitude. They were all quite nice. I really need to send them some money next time I'm flushed. Those particular Methodists are such wonderful, compassionate people. I think the conclusions they took from the Bible are diametrically opposed to those taken by the Baptists. I feel a hero complex coming on. All I want to do is just go make a bunch of sandwiches for people and hand them out. But for the right reasons, not for me or to, whatever. Story 21. I was never homeless but had a rough childhood. Always one step away from being homeless in my childhood. I am fine now at the age of 43, decent job, nice family, and my own apartment. However, when I see a homeless person, I invite them for a meal, or if they're sleeping, I don't disturb them, and usually leave $20 next to their pillow. Also, whenever someone asks me for money in the street, I always ask them if they're hungry, or if so, I take them to the nearest restaurant and buy them a square meal and I sit down and talk with them. I don't know, I guess because many nights I went to bed hungry when I was a teenager, so it affects me to this day. Edit. Wow, someone gave me a silver. Thanks, stranger. Story 22. I was homeless for about a year around age 18 to 19. The best days were when a friend called to invite me over and I could shower, do laundry, and just hang out and feel normal for a while. When I first became homeless, I was working at the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Later, I also worked in a coffee shop. I would get ready for work in public restrooms and try to keep as clean as possible. But I'll never forget being completely mortified the day my manager pulled me aside and told me I stank. Aside from that, one of the hardest things about being homeless is boredom. I'd go to work, then try to preoccupy my time going running, going to the library, or whatever. But it was such a relief to have a friend invite me over. It made me feel more human to just relax for a few hours, watch a movie, have a beer, whatever. I don't think people realize how lonely and bored you get when you don't have a place to live, so you are stuck hanging out at the library or a park all day. If you have a friend who is homeless, try to still be their friend. You don't have to try and solve all their problems for them, but just hang out with them sometimes. It means a lot. Story 23. Safety. I was homeless from around age 19-ish through age 21. I got screwed out of my employment and my sister, who was my roommate, kicked me out when I couldn't make rent. She kicked me out maybe a few days after I lost my job, so she didn't even give me time to find something else. I was living paycheck to paycheck, so I had no savings. I lost my car pretty quickly, which took away even more of my ability to try and get a job. I was in and out of friends' houses, staying with friends in hotels, hanging out in an IHOP just for a place to be. I became friends with regulars and the staff, so they fed me from time to time. But I can't express how scary and dehumanizing it was. As a female, I got taken advantage of a lot by my friends. They took it as a free pass to be able to do whatever they wanted to me because I had nowhere else to go. It was a dark time, and I'm so thankful I never turned to drugs. I had a few friends that genuinely cared and would ask me if I had eaten and bring me food, or let me sleep at their house without assaulting me, and honestly, they kept me alive. Eventually, my mom had met and married my stepdad, and when he caught wind of what was happening, he lost his gosh dang mind and immediately bought me a plane ticket to come stay with them. I didn't talk to my mom for years, and I didn't know my stepdad, so it was really hard to transition, but he really was the best thing to ever happen to me. I went from homeless to having a steady career, a wonderful boyfriend, and a beautiful daughter, and a very comfortable life. Story 24. As someone who lives in a shelter, so technically homeless but never without a physical roof over our heads, kindness and socks. Anything not covered by food stamps is always the greatest need, in my experience. Food is offered in abundance and seldom scarce if you know where to look. We often needed hygiene supplies: soap, shampoo, detergent, toilet paper, wet wipes, and socks. Never enough socks. The best thing? Treat me as though I'm a fellow human being. Offer direct help. Tell me what you're willing to do, since asking is hard. You are a good person for asking. Because of people like you, I am on the path to success and gainfully employed. Story 25. I live in a small county that has a pretty bad homeless problem. I'd say a large percentage are addicted to something or mentally ill. The idiots in the local government just had the opportunity from the state for over $1 million in funding for mental health and addiction assistance, but passed on it because they said they don't have enough people to do the work. Homelessness is not the problem that needs to be fixed. It's a symptom of a bigger problem no one seems to want to deal with. On a one-on-one level, many good posts here, but ultimately, much of this can be solved with the government actually giving a crap and voters who are not afraid to pay for it. Story 26. When I was homeless 13 years ago, I thought at the start all I need is food, shelter, and water. As the months ticked by and the little bit of cash I made each day got me food and water, it became all about shelter. Doorways, stairways, big bins, and old empty buildings served well. By about month 6-ish, what I really wanted was to be recognized as a human, not spat at, peed on, or beat up because I was a useless piece of crap or should do the world a favor and end myself. Some of the nice words people would say as they walked past, usually drunk. The nicest thing anyone ever did for me was when I was trying to get to the night shelter and was walking up a major road. A police officer stopped and picked me up. I got a stern telling off for putting myself and others in danger, but when he drove me to get a hot chocolate and whacked the heating up in his car so I could get warm, I couldn't help but fall asleep. The heat was amazing as it engulfed me, and I felt at ease. After 20 minutes or so, it felt like a lifetime. He dropped me off at the train station and left me with food, water, and enough money to get a train to the shelter. He was a hero, and I will never know his name, but will remain eternally grateful. Story 27. I was homeless. Screw alcohol. I needed shower and laundry facilities the most. Seriously, all I wanted was a job to claw myself out of the crap. I could never guarantee when I'd be clean and have clean clothes, so it was freaking hard to try and interview for jobs. I got around this by, unfortunately, no choice, begging, and getting enough to go and use the shower at a truck stop. I would steal shower gels, deodorant, and toothpaste just to get by. Unsurprisingly, I could always afford a freaking drink though. The kindest thing anyone ever did for me was two different things. Shout out to my local job center who, despite being useless as freaking most of the time, got me unemployment literally 5 minutes after I signed the papers to claim, which brings me to number 2. Shout out to shelter. Of all the services in the UK, this one is absolutely invaluable. They got me in a shelter, got me moved into a flat, helped me work out how to claim for my housing costs. I'd always worked and paid my own rent before, and just generally made crap freaking happen. I'd have been screwed without them. Now, good on the UK government then. It sounds like they actually did a lot to help and, take part in, a solution to the problem, right? Also, so many of these stories can just be wrapped up in addiction, and it's so sad because it's not only about just like losing your job, but also where all your money's going to, and it just kind of consumes their whole life, and once you're at the bottom, it's so hard to find anyone that will give you a chance to help you to even dig out of it. So it's good to have somebody that will have your back. Story 28. I was living in my car for 2 weeks after getting kicked out over a stupid fight with my parents. My sister called her ex-boyfriend, who she knew had space out in his acreage for me to stay. Stayed there pretty much rent-free and chipped in what I could. To this day, still one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. When homeless people ask me for money, I usually say no, but I'll buy you food as an easy get-out-of-jail-free card. Usually they say no, and some even cuss you out. One man took me up on it and actually ended up having a $20 steak with him from Ricky's. Haha. Story 29. Still not fully recovered, but better. Lived in my car for a year until I managed to save for a room with my guy. We still suffer greatly. We constantly were cold or miserably hot and could not run AC or heat because we could not afford gas. Food was hard. We could only afford to go to the homeless shelter, and sometimes that food had maggots or was rotten. The places we had to go for help were very far away, using more gas, burning more money. We were constantly shuffling everywhere just to get us help to move forward to a glimmer of hope, and it was often shot down. I washed myself with a washcloth and bathroom sinks and was humiliated to do so. My period was awful because sometimes I did not have any sanitary products and had to use toilet paper. I felt so disgusting and worthless. Being clean felt like a privilege. People looked at me like an addict because I was 79 pounds at 5'7" because we just didn't have food. It hurt. People looked at me like I was a wild animal. My baby would work 12 to 18-hour shifts doing overtime while I sat in a hot or cold car. I can't work due to a disability. He was constantly tired and would basically only sleep. We both cried daily and often considered just unaliving ourselves. Please be kind to homeless. Oh, wow. It's just always heartbreaking to read just stories of what people not only went through, but sounds like are still going through. Be kind to the homeless. Story 30. This is late, but I was homeless for a couple of months when I was 16, while my mom and her roommate lived in a 40-foot trailer with 2 dogs. We got kicked out, and they stayed there while waiting for the house next to the trailer to vacate. Old sick lady to die. No room for me. My mom would have tried to make room if I wanted, but I knew that would have been worse than what I went through, especially given my strained relationship with her. So I told her I was going to stay at my friend's house for the summer. That was partly true, as I was couch hopping most of the time, but I did have nights where there was nowhere to go. no one to help, and so I wandered the streets until morning when I could go to a friend's house and nap. A couple times my friend's mom caught me sleeping on the concrete outside or in my friend's closet when I wasn't allowed to stay over. I never told her I was homeless, so she had no reason to let me stay there every night. The nicest thing anyone did for me was give me shelter. They fed me and let me wash my clothes, one outfit I was wearing all summer. I remember the laundry part the most, since I was always afraid to ask to use the washer and dryer and my stuff was really dirty. At the end of the summer, I went back to where my mom was staying. Since the old lady was in the hospital at this point, we had full access to the garage. I ended up living in a tent in the garage next to the trailer. It was alright. I had somewhere to put my clothes at least and wash stuff as the laundry machines were in the garage, and somewhere to sleep without fail, and food. It honestly wasn't that bad, minus the cold at night and some Jerusalem crickets, my biggest fear. They got into the garage while I was trying to sleep. The scraping noise on the concrete is pretty awful, and peeing in the sink because the toilet in the trailer was worse than a porta potty. I'm female. Most people in this thread had it much, much worse. But that's just my story. I didn't really suffer all that much, but I got to experience something I think is valuable, and I hope it made me a better person. Yeah, I don't think you have to even discredit or justify the fact that other people may have had it worse. I think just being homeless or having to struggle at all is enough to write a story. I know they're not writing the story for everybody to just feel bad, and it's kind of just a little pity piece, but, detailing your story of struggle, it's just like, that's tough, and that's hard, and I'm always happy to hear that everybody made it out through most of the time and is doing better. So, more power to you, and keep up the good work. Story 31. All of these people are right, but hope helps a lot. I was dumped out on the streets after a week because the people I was staying with thought 6 moons and a slice of sunshine was long enough to have already gotten a job. NYC, so yeah, no, LOL. And it nearly broke me. I went to their place to get a few important things last week, actually. They treated me like dirt to the point I was screaming and sobbing. They couldn't tell me why they called me family, then wanted me to have relations with disgusting strangers just to feed myself. They said it was because I lied, but I didn't lie about anything. When I kept pressing, I was told they don't owe me an explanation. No, you only dumped me on the streets of the Lower East Side. No big deal. Whatever. Also, there are a lot more homeless trans youth than you'd think. Most youth in my program were trans or non-binary. Respectable young adults tossed like garbage for what they wear and who they have relations with. My 20th birthday is next week and I'm a completely different human being. It's kinda weird. Just be supportive of your fellow humans, guys. If you think you're gonna spend that dollar on drugs, just do it. Living homeless for long enough screws you up permanently. Being an invisible citizen will make you crazy. Let them get drunk or high together, they're not bothering anyone. Maybe in the future we'll realize giving the homeless showers and clothes keeps them off drugs and in work. Story 23. As a person that was homeless for a while in California, I can tell you it sucks. Don't let it get to that point. Not having an address kills job prospects. You'll be at the mercy of hypocritical religious or state-run shelter programs for food and shelter. Police will harass you regularly. Finding a place to store your belongings is a nightmare. A large amount of the other homeless you will run into have criminal or mental issues. The system is extremely sexist. A woman will always get a room over a guy because female shelters and family shelters don't want men. Make friends, but don't tell them anything about any progress you are making getting off the streets. Even the seemingly nicest homeless person will rob you in that kind of desperate situation. Don't rely on the police for help. Crime is high and your chances of becoming a victim is high. Keep to yourself and avoid other homeless as much as possible. Story 33. Homeless as a kid. Food, food, and food. Stealing food is easy, but most small gas stations will just tell you to leave, and most chain stores will have someone follow you around as soon as you walk in. As a typical rule of thumb, don't give homeless people money, especially kids. Give us food. My sister and I were given money a few times by some very generous people, so naturally we went to spend it on food as fast as possible, only for our parents to come back and get mad that we spent the money we were given. After that, we had to give the money to our parents so they could get more drugs. But we could eat any food that was given to us. If you're doing a gift drive or something similar and you give gifts for the kids that aren't practical, coats, gloves, shoes, etc., they need to be small, something that could easily be jammed into a backpack or small duffel bag. If it's too big, it'll get left behind. I had a set of jacks and a yo-yo that fit in a pencil bag that I kept with me for years. Also, if you see some homeless kid around an area, often notify OCs or your local PD. Odds are that they have a relative looking for them. A police state trooper picked my sister and I up off the street and took us to OCs, and they got in contact with my cousins in the next town over. We were at my cousin's house before dinner. Story 34. I was homeless as a direct result of my addiction, which was a result of my severe depression. So first and foremost, I needed therapy, not only to unpack the depression and addiction aspect, but to unpack the years of degradation caused by homeless and being a drug addict. Society is generally cruel to these people. I find myself even falling into this category at times, despite having firsthand experience. Overall, on a day-to-day basis, I needed food, water, and shelter. Ironically, for me, the best thing that happened was getting arrested. This is not the case for many people, as treating addiction and homelessness as a crime does not address the underlying causes of these social pathologies. Lucky for me, my state, Oregon, offered a free drug and alcohol rehab center for high-risk offenders of relapse and recidivism. I spent a year at an inpatient treatment facility and got the help I needed. Today, I'm working with the Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative at my university and am studying homelessness and addiction in graduate school so that someday I can influence national policy, so that these issues will stop being treated as criminal matters, but instead as social illnesses that arise as a result of failing social systems. I want more programs across the nation, and even the world, like the one I went through. Instead of locking me in jail and temporarily arresting the problem, I was given time and a place to address my specific issues that led to my addiction and subsequent homelessness. Not everyone agrees on this aspect, but coming from personal experience, I know I only recovered because I received the help that I now realize I always deserved. I love this. This is a very noble mission from somebody who has been at the lowest of lows and wants to really try and re-engineer the way things are addressed. Good on him. I hope that helps a lot of people. Story 35. I was what's called working homeless. I had a life, a job, and stuff, but I had no place to live and no ability to get my own home or apartment even. I slept in my car for a few days. Talking to me like I was a normal person went a long way. I was destitute or obviously homeless, but knowing I had nowhere to go after work besides my car to drive to a Walmart or industrial parking lot, so no friends or coworkers saw me living out of my car was the most depressing situation I've been through. It's shameful. They're giving me a chance on a place to stay. I wasn't homeless for long, thankfully, but I had a coworker who let me rent a room, and I was able to get my life going again. Story 36. I was living out of my car and couch surfing for about 2 years. I missed people I could trust, so I would offer to get food or cook for them, do the dishes, and leave them leftovers in exchange for a safe place to park, a couch to crash on, possibly a shower, and a meal with people, or hard labor depending on the person. What I needed most was safe places to park, potable, running water, and I missed having access to refrigeration, as any perishable food I had to eat ASAP or toss it as I got too full, and wonder where I was going to eat next to avoid getting food poisoning. I was lucky I had a job, though it wasn't enough to make rent anywhere to store my stuff with how much I moved for work every month to 2 weeks in the summer, but I was able to save up that way. I was also quite lucky I could afford a $10 a month gym membership that I just left the last address I had attached to my account so I could keep accessing it when I was in the area, where I didn't know anyone and wasn't comfortable couch surfing. The best thing someone did for me was when I found myself 1,000 miles north from home with a boyfriend that said if I moved up with him, I'd never have to worry about being homeless again, but didn't tell me he lived in school housing and hadn't checked with his 5 roommates if it was okay for me to take it in. So I was back to my car for my first Oregonian winter. A coworker of mine found out and let me crash on his couch for a whole month till I got approved for an apartment. The first night he took me in, the whole passenger side of my car froze over with 2 inches of ice from the freezing sleet that week. If it weren't for him, I think I probably would have frozen to death in my car. I was very unprepared for the weather up there. One night I woke up from a dream he was trying to chase me into some unfamiliar mountain terrain, and I woke up to him staring at me from the foot of the couch at 4 a.m. Then he turned and put the TV on. I couldn't really sleep there again while he was home, but I also didn't want to freeze to death. Not the most terrible thing that happened during that time in my life, but creepy AF. Story 37. Obligatory, I've never been homeless, but I would like to put this story here. When I lived in LA, a homeless man stopped us and was freaking out. Someone earlier had said they would buy him any food item he wanted, and he said cheese, thinking he was being pragmatic. He stood there holding a block of cheese with a $70 price tag on it, looking bewildered. He wasn't sure if this was a normal price for cheese now. He kind of felt guilty he made the guy spend that much, kind of angry that he wasted that amount when he could have made better use of it, mostly confused. So whatever you do to try and help homeless people, I suggest not doing that. Story 38. At my job, you get one free meal at the time of your break. I was going and giving my meal to a homeless man who used to always be by my work. One day, I was told it was considered stealing, and if I did it again, I would be fired. I got all of my coworkers' approval, and at my break, took the money out of the tip jar and gave it to the man. He came in from the snow and had a warm meal and a nice place to sit. Doing something as little as helping someone get out of the snow for a few hours and giving them something to eat means everything. I've never been homeless myself, but I know that if I was, I would want someone to help me. Also, just having a conversation with someone helps. This same homeless man was crying because his wife had died the night prior when I first approached him. So I think just being a shoulder to cry on for someone is great. It doesn't require you to give them money or anything. Again, so true. And not only for homeless people. I mean, like the kind of basic humanity of just being open and discussing and conversing and, vulnerability. Talking, letting someone vent, whatever. They don't need to be homeless, like just be a human to other humans. A lot of people need that and they don't have it, even if they have homes. Story 39. When I was 19, I moved from the Caribbean to London. Tropical paradises don't have much in the way of meaningful careers. I shared rent with my cousin, but it took a toll on my mom's income trying to support me from across the seas in what was the most expensive city in the world at the time. The first bit of kindness came after the landlady canceled our rent agreement because we were always late and she had a mortgage to pay. We cleaned up the place, packed our stuff, and stayed there with the lights off for almost a week. At the end of the week, the estate agent shows up and was certainly surprised to see us there. She got angry for a bit, but still let us stay for a couple more days. The second and deepest bit of kindness came from 6 months after that, when once again my cousin and I were not able to meet rent reliably, and the agreement was canceled yet again. This time the estate agent lived directly under us, so there was no hiding. With nowhere to go and no money, despair almost gripped me. But without missing a beat, my other cousin's landlord said I could sleep on his couch for as long as I needed and use the facilities for free. I stayed there for 3 months. They all helped me get set up with unemployment benefits and an affordable room. Some 15 years later, I'm a world away with a wife, kids, a house, and my actual dream job. Story 40. My coworker let me live with him rent-free for a year until I could save money to move out of state where it was more affordable. Another stranger also fostered my dog for that year so she wouldn't end up in a shelter, and so I wouldn't have to lose her. These two individuals changed my life for the better, and I could never repay them enough. I worked full-time, had no vices. I just ended up in a crappy situation and I needed someone to help me. I think without these two, I would for sure have committed self-unaliving. My life was just so crap. I was out of resources and my dog was/is my best friend. I now have a really good job and can afford a nice home for me and my pup. We can eat well and afford luxuries. Life is better. Story 41. Money for drugs, second a hot shower, third food. Then I got clean and a chance was all I needed. Someone to let me have a chance to earn my way. Taking a chance on people with criminal records. I had messed up so many times for years. I had an ankle monitor. It was the middle of the summer, hot as frick, so I'm in shorts. Everyone can see I have an ankle monitor on, and am therefore a criminal. I told him, my boss, the whole story. I have over 20 felonies, all nonviolent and drug-related. He still hired me, taught me a trade, and that really let me get my crap together. Been working for him going on 7 years, and been clean and out of trouble ever since. Just because someone has a long career of screwing up doesn't mean that they won't reach a point for change, but someone has to let them have that opportunity, which is a risk, and you could get burned. I screwed over more than I can count of people who tried to help me, but thankfully I kept meeting people who let me try again and gave me a shot, and that literally is what saved my life. Taking that chance can let someone become a real person again. Before it had been over a decade of shooting up, another 6 or 7 years of just doing drugs, effing up, but the drugs is what really did me in. Not homeless the entire time. By the end, I was just waiting for it or someone to end me. Fortunately, I got locked up instead and finally got tired of chasing it. Not just thinking in my head, I don't want to do this anymore like you think about losing weight or eating better. It was at this point of there ain't no other option. I make this shot at getting clean work or I give up, and this is it. I don't mean to sound overdramatic, but I don't know how else to convey the mindset and the change of mindset from chasing what you wanted to not wanting to chase it, but not being able to stop and it destroying everything but you couldn't do anything about it. Sometimes just giving someone a few bucks to get high so they aren't sick can make it another day. So they could reach that point is the best you can do when addiction is the problem at hand. Sorry this was so long, and I'm on the phone and formatting sucks, but I've lived this and been through it, and I am on a big mental health addiction and prison reform. Story 42. I lived on the streets when I was 15. The best thing someone did for me was give me $200. They were a teacher who I had multiple classes with the year before, and we just ran into each other. The thing I needed was someplace safe to go. I had issues at home. That's why I ran away. Duh. But police kept trying to send me back to that. I was even capable and smart enough that I set up a way to start college early, at 16. But social services then intervened and took me out of the place I had finally gotten, along with some college roommates, and forced me to live with another relative who just happened to be a tweaker. That relative thought they could get money by taking me in, and after 6 months of not getting anything, kicked me out. Honestly, social services screwed my teen years up. Instead of getting a bachelor's degree by 20, I wasn't even allowed to get my GED until I was 17 because of their insanity. I ended up homeless multiple times because they kept sending me to bad homes, because they didn't believe a 16-year-old could support themselves. If they had just let me do the things the way I had started, I would have had a head start on independence and a decent life. Instead, they sent me into homes with greedy abusers and drug addicts. Social services should listen to the kid, and if they are in a good place, even if it's a 15 or 16-year-old working full-time and living with older people in a rental, they should leave them alone. They didn't listen to me at all, neither did the police. They basically just kept hitting the reset button on my life, forcing me to redo stuff that should have been done already, while putting me into the hands of adults they did believe who were awful people. Wow, that's actually awful. I mean, this kid was setting himself up for great things, smart and capable and had money, and just because of the system, they kind of just sent him back and he got screwed a bad hand. Jeez. Story 43. Tampons and pads. If I would have known the cup existed, I would have really appreciated it. Best thing was when I was basically abandoned and told to find a police officer to take you to a homeless shelter. I went into the store and was left at to see if I could get a hold of my parents. I was completely across country from them. After the lady at the deli heard my conversation, which ended with my mother saying, "You can't come home," I of course broke down crying. She hugged me and said, "I can't do much, but I've been where you are, so take this," and handed me $20. Another worker came up after that and offered to take me to her house for the night, feed me, let me shower, and get me to the women's homeless shelter in Seattle the next day. These two ladies really helped me out in the worst moment of my life. I really appreciate all they did, and I really wish I could thank them now. Story 44. Living in a van for half a year during the recession, looking for work, when said van runs out of gas on interstate. Pulled to the shoulder, hazards on, walked 5 or so miles to fill what I could in a gas can using car change. Came back, van was gone, towed and impounded later. Found out. It was late by the time I walked back to town, tried to nap in a Walmart. Random guy sees me and learns my predicament from an employee I told. Gives me a ride home to a hotel and pays for the night. Refused anyway for me to get a hold of him and pay him back when I could. Extremely grateful to this day. Story 45. I can't really tell you what I needed most, but I can tell you what I needed the least. At least 3 times a day I had people yelling at me. They called me lazy, a fraud, not worthy of life, drug addict looking for her next fix. Basically any crappy thing you can think of. What they didn't know is on my 18th birthday, I came home from school to find all of my stuff in the yard. My dad, who was an extremely abusive alcoholic, said that since I was 18, he no longer had a legal obligation to take care of me. He also changed the locks on all the doors so I couldn't get in the house. I lived in southern Indiana at the time, and for various reasons, I didn't really fit in with the country folks there. So I literally didn't have anyone to go to. I was fortunate enough for a manager at a local factory to offer me a job, and that's how I got into the casework industry. At 25, I am now a project manager at a different casework company and am making $60,000 a year. Thanks to this generous man, not only did he save my life, but he gave me the opportunity to save up enough money to move back to Seattle, which is my hometown. It's crazy how just one little step like that, I mean, we don't have full information on if the dad gave her warning or anything like that, but I mean, your life could be completely normal, and the next you come home and bam, like how, if you're not given anything like that or no one extends a hand to help, that's just it, you know? It's so hard to bounce back, it seems, from all these stories, and thank God for a lot of these people. Story 46. I was homeless for the better part of a year, like sleeping on park benches homeless. The best thing people did for me was not assume I was a junkie. I was not doing drugs or drinking. I was suffering from mental illness. Some people gave me money and said I was getting food, and they seemed to believe me. The nicest guy was this manager of a pizza place that sold by the slice. I'd go in at closing and he'd give me the leftovers. The worst part was people who assaulted homeless people because they could. I got my nose broken by a guy who harassed me, and another guy put a gun to my head for laughs as I slept. I have PTSD, but it gets better with time and therapy. I've been living in a house for a few years now. People suck. Story 47. Well, obviously money and my job, lol. I'm so happy I had a job when I found myself homeless. I ended up renting a storage unit and living in there for a while. Basically, when I first realized I'm going to be homeless, I plan out everything I'm going to need to take care of. First, somewhere for me to stay out of the elements, so storage unit. Then it was hygiene, so the storage unit was right next to the gas station. I would get up early for work, go into the restroom, and shave, brush my teeth, wipe my face, and stuff will fast. And then I got a gym membership, so I had a place to shower, and the place had some laundry, so I was able to throw in a small load, work out, shower, and leave. There was also a laundromat, not too far from my storage unit, maybe a mile or half a mile away. Other than that, I had to invest in a watch, so I knew what time it was when I'm at my unit. Eventually, I got a small portable charger to help charge my phone while I was sleeping. Also, I charged that and my phone at work, and sometimes I would go to the restaurant across the street and ask them to charge my phone, and I'll read a book while I drink at the bar. I got those little sticky lights to put up on the side of my unit, and I made sure the storage unit was just big enough for me to lay down a twin-size mattress. The worst part was I had to have a pee jug because the restroom was in the main office, and I'm not sure if they had a security guard, but they had cameras in the building, so I wanted to make sure I stay as hidden as possible. Also, I had to have a knife with me. There were definitely other people in there I could hear muffling, talking, or cough once in a while, and since I'm in the unit, I couldn't really lock myself in. And for the person who helped me the most, it's my sister. At this point, I haven't talked to her in years, just no communication. And she calls me out of the blue and we are chatting, and she asked if I wanted to stay with her. At this time, I told her I got in a divorce and I'm living on my own trying to pay bills. I said yes, and my life took off ever since. I'm doing great now. I got a wife that loves me and a cat that is crazy. I have 2 cars, and we are looking to get our own home instead of apartments in the next year or 2. Oh, and we have plans to start our own business within a few years or so. But that's my story, or the basics of it. There's so much craziness I can go on about, but this comment is long enough. Story 48. I was only technically homeless as my family could no longer afford to pay for utilities on our house. We did switch between sleeping in our church and at our uncle's house, but things were tough. I think the only thing we needed the most was reliable transportation to school, as it was getting more and more tough to make it every day. One of the best things anyone ever did for me didn't necessarily relate to my homelessness, but at school, a teacher had recognized me as a good student, and soon enough the whole class rang in listing things they liked about me, and it simply made me forget about the problems at home. My family was also dealing with my father being unfaithful to my mother, and that led to a divorce between them. The compliments and everything that they just said made all of those troubles melt away. I was no longer thinking about where we would sleep next or what we would have to eat for dinner tonight. I was happy for weeks afterward. I wish I could go back and tell them thank you and what I think about them before I had to move away. Oh, that's kind of like just the sweetest. Let's just have a big round of compliments for this young gentleman. That's sweet. Story 49. For woman, pads or tampons, socks, quarters for laundry and laundry detergent, underwear, travel size toothpaste, deodorant, shaving cream, waterless shampoo or baby powder for hair. If they have a dog, a flea collar. Remember, food is just one of the many needs. People often forget how critical hygiene items are. Also remember, homeless people are actual people, and so you can usually ask a homeless person what items they need. Best thing anyone ever did for me was just hand me $20 in a supermarket. I know people get weird about giving homeless people money, but if someone is in or in front of a grocery store, they're probably legit there to buy food. Since many homeless people have dietary restrictions, diabetes is a major one, if you insist on buying food for them, please ask what they want before you get it for them. Well-meaning people have gotten me food that I couldn't eat or that was perishable or that needed a microwave to cook while I was homeless. And though the gesture meant a lot, I was unable to use that food. I never actually thought about the dietary restrictions. How freaking ignorant of me. Story 50. My husband and I were homeless briefly when we got out of detox. Funny thing is, we always had a place to crash an active addiction because we had drug buddies to stay with. When we were using, there was always a way to hustle up money. When we were clean, there was nothing. I always give extra cash because I have been there. Kindness went a long way. McDonald's let us sleep there one night and hired us. A week in a motel room until we got paid was another great gift. Rides and bikes were amazing donations. We live in a small town with no soup kitchen, so meals were awesome. It also gets really cold in the winter, and something that would have helped us is warm winter clothes. Story 51. My name is Dakota, and this subject is very nice to see, but anyways, when my mom was doing whatever she does, I got sick of how she treated me, and how we were homeless and how she never got a job because she didn't want to exactly, her words, when I asked her to go get one is, I do what I want. So when I started to go to school again, I met this kid named Gray. Screen name. Let's just say we screwed the same girl, but she played me, and so now we're best friends. But anyways, we hung out and he started to get to know me, and then we get to my living situation. I've never really complained to anyone but myself about this. Soon he talked to his father, and his father soon talked to me, and then he talked to my mother and worked out me living with him for a while. But now I'm so grateful for the help. I'm only going to become smarter and stronger from that experience. There was another guy named Jojo that as well let me live with him for a while, and I would occasionally do his dishes, but only because I felt bad since I was paying no rent. But anyways, this is my first Reddit post and I hope it's good. Story 52. If you are interested in this subject, there is an episode of Adam Conover's, yes, from Adam Ruins Everything, podcast, factually dealing with homelessness. The podcast is more serious than the show. He interviews experts in the field and leads a conversation on the subject at hand. His expert in the homelessness episode is a man who was formerly homeless and who currently works in outreach and activism addressing getting people off the streets. He has a lot of interesting insight and addresses what is helpful, what is hurtful, and what types of help actually gets people back on their feet. That sounds awesome. I'll have to check that out. Story 53. Other than a place to shower, blankets were our second biggest concern. Even living in our car, it didn't provide much insulation from the cold winter outside. Thankfully, after the first night, the cops left us alone. If I ever find myself in that situation again, I'm headed south. I wouldn't be able to make it through another winter like that. Someone from Reddit sent us 2 0-degree mummy sleeping bags, and someone else sent us a gift card to Walmart that we used to purchase a second comforter. So with the extra blanket and the mummy bags, we were at least a lot warmer than that. Story 54. When I was younger, I always hung out at the skate park. I lived pretty far from my friends, so after parties, I was like 16, I'd get dropped off at the park and usually hang there from like 4 a.m., then wait till someone came later to skate and hang out till late at night and do it all over again. Once it was raining and I was by myself. So I put my jacket over my knees and I slept under the covering of one of the kiddie slides on the playground. Mind you, I wasn't homeless or doing drugs, just didn't want to go home or couldn't find a ride. A nice lady gave me a sandwich and water, which I politely declined, then hesitated, and then took it and thanked her. I love egg and chorizo sandwiches now. After a couple years of doing this, the tennis shack manager, close by the skate park, saw me and gave me the gift I was most grateful for: employment. I was 16 and never had a job before. He would give me money to string tennis rackets and a warm place to string them at. I caught on fairly quickly, and there were actual orders for other people. Expensive rackets. I told him when I got a job, I'd get him whatever he wanted. He said an instant coffee machine. I moved and didn't talk to him for a few years, and walked in there lugging a Keurig machine. He broke down crying. We still talk almost 10 years later. And now I have the weird skill of knowing how to string a tennis racket without ever really playing. Thanks, Terry. Story 55. I'm late to this, but homeless right now. I got extremely lucky with how things played out. I left Texas and went to LA, Santa Monica because of the weather, and I figured it was a long time. I needed good weather to survive. Day 2 of being here on Reddit, I bumped into a guy that was homeless a year prior, also in SM. He met me and bought me dinner and gave me $20, and we talked and got to know one another. Fast forward 2 months later, once a week I crash at his place with his roommate that was also homeless. I get a good night's sleep, something that I cherish. I get a warm cooked meal of my choosing. I get company of similar interested people. We watch movies and TV shows. For the release of Stranger Things Season 3, I got to be there and we watched the entire season. I get to do laundry. I have a human connection. I can text anytime about anything. The first guy bought me my birth certificate and had it mailed to his place so I could get my ID. He talked to his boss, who hired him off the streets, about me, and as soon as my ID gets in, I have a job to go to. The other guy is offering to pay for a gym membership so I can take a real daily shower, instead of going into the ocean or using those little beach showers. They are funding everything like that to keep me going. Heck, they even put me on their Netflix account so I can watch movies and shows during the day. I have friends online that have sent me money on PayPal. That goes to stuff I need. I'm saving most of it for bills when I have them again. Those 2 guys and I are going to get a 3-bedroom place and split it. I'm part of a family now. I had one Twitch streamer who back in the day I had watched daily for hours and donated a lot of money to offer me the ability to ask for any of it back when needed. He then sent me enough to buy a power pack for my phone. This allows me to stay outside flying my sign, making money and food longer. An investment of sorts. The city I am in, I have regulars that walk past me asking if I need anything. They give me stuff daily. I fly a sign, and while it's illegal in the spot I am in, I didn't know this. No one makes me move. I keep to myself, I keep my area clean, and I don't ask anyone for anything. I let the sign do all the work. I average $15 a day and more food than I can eat, and I can put away food, mind you. The worst part is sleeping. The fear of being robbed every night is real and happens. Getting into a fight is a real issue as well. I sleep with a knife in my hand and a literal eye open all night. It's not easy, and I'm exhausted. So what things are needed? Socks. These are the biggest thing anyone that has been out here will agree to. Socks are the best thing. Feet care is hard but extremely needed, and a fresh pair of socks is orgasmic. Snacks is a good thing too. Jerky is great, keeps well, light to carry, and protein. Hygiene stuff like toothpaste or toothbrush, soap, hand sanitizer, tampons, pads. Money is great, but so are items. As long as it's not heavy or bulky, you have to remember we carry our entire life in our backpacks. There's a lot of weight on us already. Something I don't think many people will say here either, but a conversation. Even if it's a quick 2-minute thing. I don't do drugs, I don't drink, so it's different with me. People can approach me easily, but talking to me like I am a human is amazing and uplifting. So many people give me terrible looks as they walk past or just ignore me. I've had people scream at me about how I should be in jail, how I should stop drinking or doing drugs, how I'm a burden to society. I've had things thrown at me, spit at, yelled at, fake punched at, accused of being a thief, and once accused of obviously being so stupid I can't even hold a job. People don't know my story. They don't know that here in a week or two I'll be working. They don't know I have 2 people about to split a home with me. They don't know I'm working to get out of this as fast as I can. They assume I'm a junkie, a worthless pile of crap. Those people I see each day, some regulars, most random, that make eye contact and smile and nod back at me means the world. It gets me through. There are things I need still and would be grateful for, but I worked my butt off each day to not sink, to get what I need to make it to the next day. I know I'm close to being out, and the people that care about you is the best feeling. I'm not good with that. I don't know that feeling well enough at all from my family upbringing. It really changed things about me, and being homeless has changed me as a person. Okay, I don't have a username or anything to cheer on, but person who wrote this story, you go. Look at them taking care of business, figuring it out. I mean, there's so many different pieces and puzzles, and you need handouts, you need help, and things are just kind of falling into place, and you love to see that happening. Also, if there's one thing I've really learned through this, I mean, conversation, humanizing, all the stuff that we've talked about is great, but socks, apparently, socks are the number one thing more than food, more than anything. Socks seem to be the most reoccurring common denominator of what you should be handing the homeless to really help them out. Because who doesn't like warm feet?